Chapter 9: Determinants of Aggregates. Equilibrium between aggregate demand and aggregate supply. We have seen how we arrive at equilibrium from a microeconomic viewpoint for a single market. P1 is the equilibrium price for a single burger. Q1 is the equilibrium quantity demanded and supplied of burger, and E represents the market equilibrium price and quantity. Now, let's talk about the country as a whole. How would we determine the equilibrium for a country's demand and supply? Instead of representing the relationship between the price and quantity, we now look at the overall price level and the level of employment as factors affecting aggregate demand and aggregate supply of all the goods and services in India, which will then help us find the macroeconomic equilibrium. Aggregate demand function. Aggregate demand refers to the demand of all goods and services produced at a given level of employment during a year. With the increase in the level of employment, aggregate demand price also rises, indicating a positive relationship between level of employment and aggregate demand price. It is measured in the terms of total expenditure. Symbolically, AD is equal to C plus I plus G plus X minus M, where C is the consumption expenditure, which refers to the expenditure incurred for those goods and services which satisfies the wants of private individuals and institutions directly. For example, expenditure for food, clothes, houses, motor cars, education, health services, milk, vegetables, etc. I is the investment expenditure, which refers to the addition to the physical stock of capital like new factory buildings, plant, machinery, tools, raw materials, etc. It is also known as capital formation. G is the government expenditure, which refers to expenditure incurred by government for the purpose of maximizing welfare and having maximum growth and development. It includes expenditure on defense, police, public utilities such as water, electricity, parks, education, health, transport, irrigation facilities, etc. X minus M is the net earnings from foreign transactions, where X is equal to exports and M is equal to imports. Net earnings from foreign transactions can be positive, negative, or zero. We can also see that ADF curve begins from above the origin on y-axis at point A, indicating that even at zero level of employment income, there is some positive consumptions for basic needs called autonomous expenditure. The ADF curve slopes upward from left to right because the level of employment and the aggregate demand price have a positive relationship. Aggregate supply function. Aggregate supply refers to the supply of all goods and services produced and distributed at a given level of employment during a year. With the increase in the level of employment, aggregate supply price also rises, indicating a positive relationship between level of employment and aggregate supply price. It is measured in the terms of factor cost, that is, the cost of factors of production. Symbolically, AS is equal to F, N bar, L, K bar, T bar. The bar sign indicates that the factor supply is held constant during a short run, where F indicates the functional relationship. N bar is the supply of natural resources like land, water, minerals, sea coast, climate, nature, rainfall, etc. L is the labor supply force, or otherwise known as the human resources. K bar refers to the stock of capital. T bar refers to the state of technical knowledge. The ASF starts from the origin, showing that the cost of production is zero when there is no employment. The curve slopes upwards from left to right, indicating a positive relationship between the level of employment and aggregate supply price. F indicates the level of full employment, which means that everyone in the country is employed, and it becomes a vertical line indicating that the supply becomes perfectly inelastic parallel to y-axis. It means that even if the price increases, the employment cannot increase. The macroeconomic equilibrium is also called effective demand. According to Keynes, effective demand is determined with the intersection of aggregate demand and aggregate supply of the country. It is the point where aggregate demand function is equal to aggregate supply function. It is represented by point E. OP is the equilibrium price level and OY is the optimal level of employment to reach equilibrium.